Hello, my name is Caitlin Way. I am an elementary special education teacher for an elementary school here in Sioux Falls. I have been teaching overall for this will be my fourth year, but I've been teaching for 3 years in the special ed department. And this is my milestone project about motivation. So before I get into, the rest of my milestone project, I just wanted to take a minute to explain why I'm choosing to talk about motivation for a milestone project. This past year, I had a student who I had a really difficult time with. I ended up getting really frustrated because I just could not find ways to be able to motivate this child. I had used, earning recess or taking away recess or earning time with a friend at lunch or taking away time with a friend at lunch or earning time on an iPad, earning time to doodle because he really liked to do that. I ended up, during Smarter Balance, I was giving him Tootsie Rolls for every question, every few questions that he finished. We've tried, shooting balls into a garbage can. I mean, it was me coming up with idea after idea, trying to figure out a way to be able to motivate this child. And these things that I would come up with, they would work for a day, maybe 2 days if I was lucky, or maybe a week if I was lucky, but then it would go away and he'd go right back into not wanting to do anything, not feeling like he was smart enough to do anything. And so I became very frustrated. I feel like a big part of my job is to be helping students like him. And so when I came and ran out of idea after idea after idea, I didn't know what else to do. So I thought, why not try to research some things about motivation, because one, I will have him next year on my caseload, and two, he's not going to be the only child that I come across who has these problems with motivation. So I really wanted to put some more tools in my tool belt to be able to help kids like him. So the problem statement that I came up with was, how can teachers motivate students who have already lost motivation? Now, I'm not going for, the student, Bobby, who has low motivation, who, sometimes works and sometimes doesn't, and it's just kind of depending on his mood. I'm not worried about a student like that. This is not for a student like that. This is for a student who has lost motivation, where, like they maybe haven't had success in the classroom for a long time. And so why try, because I'm going to get it wrong anyways, and I already feel bad about myself, kind of thing. So this is my problem statement that I'm really trying to, tweak and research here. So part of this milestone project was coming up with 3 plans that we could put in place to try to solve this problem statement that we came up with. So for the first one, my first plan, I came up with creating opportunities to breed self-esteem. I read some research on Ann Woolfolk, I think is how you say her name, Ann Woolfolk. She wrote a big chapter in her book about motivation and how in order to be motivated to do something, students must feel as though they could do it. And so, it's talking about self-esteem where, if you have high self-esteem, you're more likely to take on those challenges because you think that you can do it. But on the same, the same thinking is that if you have low self-esteem, that you're thinking that you can't do it. And so that makes it a lot more difficult to be motivated in doing something when you already think, well, what's the point? I'm not going to be able to do it anyways. The second plan that I came up with was using extrinsic motivation and rewards to increase the student motivation. So this would be, looking at things like, okay, what could reinforce this behavior of him working? What will he work for? What can I get him to do if I give him iPad time? Kind of things like that. And then the third plan that I came up with was using components of intrinsic motivation to increase motivation. So rather than be giving out these rewards or reinforcers, what can I do to help this child have intrinsic motivation? So I looked at the 3 plans that I came up with, and we were supposed to come up with a decision. And so I thought that for a struggling student to rediscover motivation, that I would need to use different parts from each of the plans. So a combination of the 3 plans. I wanted to really build aspects of self-esteem into each of these lessons that I would be implementing in over the course of 4 weeks, and also bring in things about intrinsic motivation and extrinsic motivation and how they can play a big role in motivation in the classroom. So then we also needed to come up with an implementation schedule, a list of things that we would do each day during a 4-week period. And so during week 1, I would start out by taking a baseline, trying to, figure out where my students are starting at in order to judge the growth or the progress that they had made by week 4. I'll also be doing a couple activities during this first week that I'll talk about on the next couple slides. But during those 4 weeks, students will be, looking at their self-esteem every single day. And at the end of each week on that Friday, or on the last week, it's a Thursday, students will be writing a little bit of a reflection on what they feel and how they feel about themselves, and if they feel like they're kind of growing, or if, they're backpedaling and kind of things like that, just for progress. So I touched a little bit on the activities that I would use to build self-esteem. One of these activities would be the growth mindset. So you can see the anchor chart that I have on this slide where it says, what can I say to myself instead of try thinking? Each and every day I would give my students a post-it note, and I would have them choose what kind of thinking they're going to try for that day. So if, for instance, I'm a student who, my confidence is really low and I feel like I'm not really good at anything, I want to think about what am I missing, being proactive and doing things that I can help myself get better at. So each and every day, like I said, the students would choose one of these, and then I would collect them. They would put their name on them, and then I would track on which ones they tend to go and work with, which ones I think they need to work on the most. The next activity I would use are called these warm fuzzies. So it involves those little craft balls that you see on the slide. Students would be, doing things throughout the day, and I would do my best to try to catch students doing things that are good in order to kind of build up their confidence. So then what I would do is I'd catch them being good, and then I would put a little fuzzy on their desk. Then that student would go in front of the whole class and go and put it in our class fuzzy jar. And at the end of the, however long it takes for that jar to fill up, or to a certain line or whatever, just kind of depending, then we would choose a reinforcer or a reward that the whole class could do. So some other activities that I would use to build self-esteem would be, the first one is good notes. So I would assign students 3 other students to watch throughout the day, and then for each of those students, they would need to write them a little good note. So like, for instance, I could say, I saw Sally helping somebody on the playground. That was really nice of her. Or she complimented and said nice things about so-and-so. Then the next day, I would give these good notes to those students. So each student would then get 3 good notes for themselves. And we would talk about kind of one that they're really proud of and how it makes them feel. And then we'll talk about what their self-esteem feels like when they hear those good things. Another activity that I would do is this trash talker. I know it sounds like it's, the exact opposite of what I would want to do in order to build self-esteem, but this is actually, about building positive self-talk. So it also plays with that whole growth mindset thing that we work on every single day. Another activity that I would use to build self-esteem would be looking at a student's strengths and weaknesses. So what are some things that you're really good at? Okay, and you know what? There are going to be some things that we aren't so good at. And so knowing those weaknesses, and being able to say, you know what, that's not a big deal because I've got all these strengths and I'm not going to let that affect my self-esteem. So I would go over that kind of talk in a whole group lesson. Then the next day we would talk about goal setting, personal goals, and academic goals, and what are some ways that we could reach those goals, and what are things that we need to do for those goals. And my favorite activity that I would use to help build self-esteem would be showing some kid president videos. If you have ever seen this child, he is absolutely incredible. And the students that I've shown his videos to previously really enjoy them. So we could use those as well as some activities to build self-esteem. And after I show the videos, we'd kind of talk about some things that we learned about in those videos that deal with self-esteem. So unfortunately, I don't have any findings right now because it is summertime and I am not in my classroom until the end of August. So I am not able to actually go through with this with my students that I have on my caseload. But when I do have students, then I will definitely be trying to implement this with them. Working in SPED, you always have students that have very low self-esteem, and in turn very low motivation. And so I think that by building up their self-esteem and talking about intrinsic and extrinsic motivation, using the different components from each of the plans that I came up with to solve my problem, that I could really help out a lot of the kids that I work with every day.